We're recording.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the third annual NMDELT conference. I'm glad you could be here. In other sessions, you've had a sign-in sheet for credit. We're having issues with that system right now, so I will be keeping a list of the attendees so that you do get credit for attending. My name is Cash Clifton. I'll be moderating this session. Please type questions into the chat if you do have any questions. And I would like to introduce you to David Disco from Edmentum PLATO. So David, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cash. Hi, this is David. And if you haven't met me, I've met a lot of people in the state, but haven't quite met everyone who may be new or newish to the program. I'm primarily the education consultant that works with you and has been working with this installation of the product for quite a number of years now. And what I do in that job is come in and kind of help folks out and, get people trained and, kind of work through some issues. And I've really, developed some really good positive relationships with folks in the state while I've been out there. And what we want to talk about today is how we can help our students or learners, whatever term you want to use for them, to go beyond just getting a high school equivalency or maybe refreshing on some skills. How can we introduce them to career pathways? How can we use a term, and you may have heard this already, called ILT, Integrated Learning and Training, and how to infuse that into your individual programs. So we have quite a bit of material that is already just ready to go for you, and I want to introduce that to you and talk to you about some of the supplements and some of the ideas about how you can use it. And in a follow-on session, we'll get a little bit deeper into this. So what we're looking at here is the interface for someone who's maybe a program manager in the system. It would look somewhat similar to this if I was a regular instructor. But what I need to do to find this material that I want to use is to come up to the menu button, and that menu slides out from the left. I go to Course Catalog down towards the bottom quarter of that little menu. And what I've done here to make our discussion easier to understand today is to come down here, and I've kind of shortened the library. What we're looking at here is my demonstration site. But you'll have a lot of these courses, and if there's some of these you may not have, and we can talk about why you don't have some of those, and how we can get those to you. So again, for the sake of our discussion today, I've shortened this library so it's easier to find things, so we don't have to do a lot of scrolling while we're talking today. And just a little bit of basic navigation. When you're over here, if you want to go in and say, find something specific, there's a couple of navigation aids that you can use right here at the top. And this is just kind of some basic background here. If there's a little magnifying glass, and you can come in here and start typing the name of the course. So if I wanted to find, say, GED, all I'd have to do is type GED. Or GED, if I want to find GED Science, I type GED Science, and it would pull up the possible matches. If I was looking for things, say the material that only PLATO produces, I would just click on PLATO courses, and that immediately takes out any of the custom courses. So if you're looking for just the straight PLATO material, not the custom coursework, you just go and click that switch. If I wanted to flip that and say I just want to look at the custom courses because maybe I'm looking for something that is customized, not the PLATO material, then I might have to go in and click the custom courses. So we give you a couple of ways. You can scroll up and down. I'll also mention that one of the brand new features in the system is if I need a copy of this, maybe on paper or maybe an electronic copy, I can come to the upper right-hand corner and hit print, and it will take everything on this page, and not just exactly what I'm seeing, but anything off the bottom of the scroll screen will give everything that you have. So if I need an immediate copy of all the Plato courses, I would just come over here, hit print, and I would get a copy of that. I can choose to print it or save it or do any combination thereof. So it's interesting ways to use the system. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we have that can support your students with their not necessarily just educational goals, but career goals. And a lot of those students may not even have a foreclosed idea of what they want to do for a career. Okay. So with that, we can approach that in a couple of different ways. And we have support, as you can see, like if a student says, I want to get my high school equivalency or just tune up my skills so I can get admitted to a college program, we have that material through AccuPlacer, ACT, or SAT, and that will help that student. But what's interesting is, and some people are familiar with this concept and some may not, is we have a thing called ACT Work Keys. Now, ACT Work Keys is like the ACT test, only it's focused on the academic skills needed within the workforce. Some people get maybe a little confused about that statement, so let me clarify that. If I want to go in and enter an apprenticeship program to be a plumber, I need to learn all those plumbing skills. I need to learn what all the pipes are and the traps and how to set up drains and the whole thing. But I also need to have some basic academic skills to go along with that. So think about the math that a plumber would need. They don't have to know how to measure. They'd have to know how to divide measurements and add and subtract measurements. Some of those are fractional, some of those may be decimal. So there's lots of different things. There's things like flow rate. If I put, these amount of drains in a house, what does the flow have to be outside the house for wastewater? Those kind of things that they have to be able to do. They have to be able to read charts and graphs and interpret specifications. So there is some underlying academics they need to know. And that's what we can support through ACT Work Keys. So what a lot of employers do now is when they accept students in for apprenticeship programs or job training programs, they will give them the ACT Work Keys test to see if they have the basic academic skills to do that. So we can help support students with that. Now, some of those skills may be covered by some things that the students are already working on. So for example, if the student is enrolled currently in finishing some kind of high school equivalency, then they're already learning or relearning those things in applied mathematics and reading and writing. So with that, there's some things that overlap. So they may not need to do everything. And because of the way this is built, and if I wanted to see what's in this course, all I have to do is click on that and the course opens up. And this is reading for information leveled. Leveled means that there are basic levels 3 all the way up. And I'm not going to scroll. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit collapse all up to 7. The higher the level, the more complex the reading they have to be able to do. So we use example of plumber. They may need to learn, maybe that a plumber needs to be able to read on a level 3 or 4. Sometimes I get the question about, well, is 3 or 4 like 3rd grade and 4 is, 4th grade, or how does that create to grade levels, or is it related to Common Core? And that's a question I had from one of my colleagues last night via email. She's working with a school in California, and at the high school level, they're doing work keys, and they don't quite understand it as well as they should. They're thinking about it in a K-12 manner. So I gave her some talking points to go talk to the client about this, and these really don't equate to solid grade levels. It's more like a range of skills within a grade level span. So if we would open this up, say level 4, would be drawing conclusions, finding cause and effect, and finding what's important in information, those kind of things. And if you start looking through the materials, you would kind of land on the fact that that's probably level 4 is maybe grade anywhere from 5 to 7. Now that's a pretty broad range, but it gives you a ballpark for it. So one thing I caution people about when they approach this is those are not grade levels. They are academic functioning levels, and they don't equate to an exact grade level. So that's something to keep in mind when you're starting to use this. But I'll open that back up again. You'll notice that in the reading section, reading for information, there is a pretest. So it goes in and it can filter out how much the student already knows about this, and then we'll focus them on exactly what they need to learn. So it does do kind of a placement, whereas I don't really call it a placement, I call it more of a filter. Okay, so it kind of filters them to the things they need to focus on. The only thing I want to say here is the one that says comprehensive, that's everything. So what we've done there is instead of separating things out by a separate course for reading and applied math, we bring everything in here and then we pull it in. There's a unit for reading, applied math, so on. If we open up applied math, these are all of the materials here, okay? And you can see that there's quite a bit of material here, but it's one stop to go in and find all of that together. So we give you a choice about how you might want to use that. And where I would want to use this is that the most important thing that you can do when you really start working with your students in a solid way is to have those conversations with folks at your sponsoring institutions who are helping students take the next step. And those folks might be counselors at the community college. They might be specialists at the one-stop operations where students are going from the high school equivalency programs into the employment agencies, those kind of things. That would really help those students get, make a solid footing towards gainful employment, okay? So when you do that, you're going to find, what the needs are in your area, or maybe the student has a goal of moving across the state or, somewhere else, and, help them find that out and really guide them rather than saying, well, you need to do about this or about that. Now, what if a student, either just doesn't know, or what if the student, maybe has a general idea? Well, let's use this search routine here. Let's go to all. And we have a course in here called Career Explorations. Okay. I'll open that one up. And one of the first questions I get about this course, Career Explorations, is, okay, what kind of placement test does it use? And here, the answer is really interesting because the answer is it doesn't use a placement test. Instead, the first unit tells the student to go off and say, okay, rather than giving you a test, we're going to go in, we're going to give you some options to explore. So you're going to take a quick tour of what career options are in science, technology, engineering, industry, agriculture, natural resources, and so on, kind of breaking it up into those big areas. They're going to take a little quiz to make sure that they kind of pay attention to the material. And then the big thing is going in and doing an activity where we ask the student to go in and explore and actively explore. So if they went in to say industry, agriculture, natural resources, and they had maybe a couple of ideas and said, oh, well, maybe I want to do this or that, then they could go in, and instead of taking a test, it becomes a more internal process for them rather than saying, well, I'm going to sit here passively for the test, and the test is going to tell me what I'm supposed to do. They come up with their own ideas, and then they can really refine those ideas. An example would be in the medical field. So the student, may know that, I could be a certified nurse assistant, or I could be a registered nurse or anything like that, but they may not realize that there's a lot of other healthcare options for them that might fit better with their personal outlook and their abilities and things like that and their goals. And they'll be covered in some of these, and they can self-discover those. And we find that that's a little more palatable to a lot of students, okay? So once they do that part, they go in and develop an academic career plan, okay? It's just, I want to be an X or a Y or do this or do that. It's not, that's not good enough. You need to come up with a plan. And as part of that plan, how much skills do I need? Oh, how much skills do I have? How much do I need? What do I need to work on? And then how do I get in the job market? Part of developing an academic career plan is also how you're going to pay for it too. So we talk about that. So I like that. It's a very realistic piece for the student rather than just saying, okay, take a test and then go learn how to fix engines or something like that. It's more of a real world thing, okay? Now we do have things that will, and some of this is new, and some of it's been around for a while, but we do have different ways to go in and, kind of work with students in a more active way. One of the big things that, and it's pretty much covers everywhere I work in the United States, is a lot of students are really wanting to go into something in healthcare, or they want to go into something in technology. Those seem to be the two big ones. Okay. Let's see here. And with that, with those technology things and with those healthcare things, you need some kind of certification beyond just getting the education. Okay? And the certification will enable the student to go in and say, all right, I want to do this, so I'm going to go in and, not only get the education, but I want to have a certificate to prove that I've been there and I can do these things. So what we've done is we've released some material that takes a student from the very beginning stages through the educational process and then gets them ready to take the certification exam. Now, I want to be really clear about this. We do not give them the certification exam itself. We give them the preparation for that. We give them the learning. We give them examples, some practice, but we don't give them the certification exam. The first one I want to show you here and share with you is CompTIA 901 and CompTIA 902. Now, if you're not familiar with those, CompTIA is the national organization that certifies people for work in the information technology industry. They have a whole series of certifications. I forget how many they have, but they run the gamut from the very beginning level to somewhat more advanced. They have specializations like cybersecurity. They have other specializations. They even have a specialization for people who want to teach other folks how to get these certifications. And everything has a number, okay? So with this, we have our first entry into this, which is the very beginning level, and it's CompTIA A plus 220-901. Now, what that means is CompTIA is the organization, A plus is the type of certification, and then this is the test number 220-901 that this supports. And what this is, it's the basic beginning if I want to be a support person in the IT industry. Now, there's many steps that you can go through, but this is the first one. So it's the 901 test, which is mainly focused on computer hardware. It talks a lot about some very basic things about what are the components of a computer, goes in and how cables and power supplies work, and how to configure things. It talks about the basics of networking. So it's a lot of the basic stuff. The interesting thing is our approach here is very similar to our other courses with a couple of exceptions. Number one, in the tutorials, you will occasionally see a simulation. And what we want the student to do there is to launch that simulation, and they can go in, and it might say, like in this one down here with print devices, it would be helpful if, rather than telling them all about printers, is to actually have them set up one. And if you've ever set up a printer, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's a little more difficult depending on how you do it. And so what we do is we've included simulations. And when the student launches a simulation, it will take over their screen, and it will go up there and it will say, this is what we want to do. And they will walk through each step one by one, and they'll get coaching as they go along. So if they make a mistake, they'll say, no, try again. And it looks like they're changing the settings of the computer, but they're really not. It's a really interesting way to learn and make it real, okay? And there's that simulation right there. Installing and sharing a network printer, okay? Not just getting a printer and pop it in the back of my computer. It's let's try to do one on a network, which is not difficult, but there's a few more steps to it, And we put these in here, and here's another one, configuring media streaming. How do you make sure that that's configured properly? Okay? And the most of it, though, it works just like our other pieces. And as you scroll down here, you can see, there's more simulations in here. And one of the other things that's maybe a little bit different here is this end of semester test. Now, we have end of semester tests in our regular academic courses, but this one is a bit longer because it is a simulation of the real exam that they're going to have to take. It's not timed. It does record time, but it doesn't shut them off at a certain time. But it will help the student analyze if they're ready for that exam, or maybe they need to work a little bit more. So we take a little bit different approach with this course. So I'm going to close that one here. And we also have one for 902, which is more software oriented. So this one is a little more hardware oriented. This one is software oriented. Now, that's what we have now. In July, we're going to release a third one in this series, and it's going to be for networking. So the idea here is that if I really wanted to improve my skills and increase my chance of employability, I could do 901, I could do 902, and the one we release in July is going to be Network Plus. So the students would be able to help design and install and troubleshoot networks for an office or a building or something like that. And it's going to talk about, cabling requirements and how, you set up server farms and things like that. So think about, your community and where your students want to be and what kind of jobs that they want, what kind are available. And if this is a need in your area, this would be something to push to them. This is all included in your package that we have for you. Now, when we release the network thing, and that network course is going to be available in July, August timeframe, as I'm looking at it now, that is subject to change, but not usually. That course will appear in your list, and it will be Plato Course CompTIA Network Plus. It'll have a number on the end of it, and I'm not sure the number right off the top of my head. So keep an eye out for that one in July to August, maybe September timeframe. I'll have a better date for you probably in early June. And, that's going to be available for you. Now, not everybody wants to go in and, be a computer jockey. So we have another one for CNA, or Certified Nursing Assistant, that works very similar. Okay. And there they are down here, 2 semesters of Certified Nurses Aid. These work very similar to our other courses, but they also have a lot more video in them. Okay, there's things like prerequisite skills, video, CPR, how to do abdominal thrust. Okay? And before anybody gets curious about what we mean by that, that's the newer updated term for the Heimlich maneuver if somebody's choking on something, because there's different ways to administer that. So instead of they call it the Heimlich maneuver, are now calling it abdominal thrust, and it's done in different positions. So if a person is maybe falling on the floor, how to go in and do that there, or something like that. So there's a lot of, here's one about first aid for injuries. So this has a lot more video content in it than some of the other things. And this prepares students for Certified Nurses Aid. There are 2 semesters to this, so it's not just a 1-semester course. So there's that semester A, semester B. So those are available right now. We're looking also at adding courses to the health area, because we know that's a growing area. We're not going to release anything that I'm aware of in the summer for health, but we are going to release another one that's a brand new area for us. And you folks may see the need for this one as well. An OSHA-sponsored green certification for building. So that will be out again in the July-August timeframe. I don't have the exact title. I'm going to probably find out the exact title maybe the next couple of weeks, and I'll make sure that I pass that along to the folks at the DELT team. And there's going to be a new one as well. And the new one is going to be in, I just slipped my mind here for a second. Give me a minute, and I'll come back to that. The new one, let's see. This is just came out the other day, and I'm trying to think of the exact wording for it. Oh, it's food safe prep. So if somebody wants to work in the restaurant industry, there's a certification for how to handle food properly, and they have to take a certification exam. Most restaurants, some bars, hotels, any kind of conference center, they have food service, will require that their personnel take this exam, and this is going to be basically training for that exam. So that's I think it's going to be a fairly, easy one to go through. I don't think it's going to be like a 2-semester long thing. So that's going to be available again in that July, August timeframe. So those are some really quick, kind of straightforward ways to work with students. Now, one thing that I want to kind of throw out to you to get you thinking about this is, what do we do when students are trying to do this together. Okay, what I mean by together is if they're trying to get their high school equivalency and needing preparation for job skills. Okay, do we fold them together? Do we do them in serial? Do we do them in steps? How do we do that? And that's something I'd like you to think about for a few minutes while I'm going to talk about some other ideas here. And, it's really important because I have a lot of conversations with clients across the country. And one of the frustrations they express to me is students tell them that they know their reading skills are low, but they don't want to spend a whole lot of time learning how to read. So with that, they may go in and the students may have trouble engaging with the material and staying engaged in the material because they get a little frustrated that things may be moving too slow. So they're trying to get that high school equivalency and they want job training all at the same time. Can we help them with that? The answer is yes, but, there's that, usual thing, yes, but. We're going to talk about that in the next session we have. So we should keep that one in mind too. So I'm not going to go in and, go down the whole list of things, but when you have time, take a look at some of these things and see, your students, your different community, and, you kind of think about, how to talk to folks about their next step. We're happy they're there right now. We're happy they're getting that high school equivalency, or maybe they're coming back to us because they need to kind of brush up before they do this. So maybe they know they need to improve their reading or their math ability before they go in and work on those higher job skills. But how can we go in and be proactive about helping them? Okay. So there's lots of little different things in here. I mentioned that career exploration one. One of my favorite ones that I'm rolling down here too is essential career skills. Okay. And a lot of people are going like, well, what do you mean by essential career skills? These are things like a person's personal qualities, people skills, communicating, problem solving, professional knowledge and skills, technology knowledge and skills. And do you know what one of the most number one things that people ask for when I'm talking about people, I mean employers ask for when hiring, is this thing right here, conflict resolution. And we're not going to give students an entire master's course on conflict resolution because there are people who get certification and degrees in conflict resolution. But we do give them a little bit of primer in that and kind of give them some things to watch out for and maybe make them aware of things. Communicating and problem solving, professional knowledge, technology knowledge. So there's all these things that kind of fold together for essential skills. Okay. Like I say, there's a lot of little surprising things in here. One of the things that I kind of skipped over is the concept of entrepreneurship. Okay. A lot of people say, I really want to work for myself. I want to have a business doing, maybe some subset of construction, like drywalling or bricklaying or something like that. They don't want to work for somebody else. They want to have their own business because that's their goal. Well, this entrepreneurship can help them. And I will also mention that one of the things that we have coming in the latter part of this year to early next year is a more full cycle entrepreneurship course. So that's coming as well. Really a lot of interesting things within here. So I'm running down on time here. I want to throw it open to any kind of questions you have. In our next session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and I'll give you some solid examples of how I've worked with other clients and maybe some clients in New Mexico that you may not be aware of on how to do this in a little more deep manner in pulling together material for students. Okay. So any questions, you can type those into chat. A couple people popped on and I had to mute them because there was a little bit of noise in the background, and I'll unmute folks that I have muted. And if you want to, you can shout out, or you can go in and type into chat. Make sure I've got my chat box going up here. And we can address any of those questions.
David, this is Cash.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So what was called CPR? The new name was it abdominal thrusts? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's not for CPR. That's for like the Heimlich maneuver. Like if somebody gets, like they're eating and they start choking on their food.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the new name for the Heimlich maneuver. I had to look that one up.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote CPR down, so you answered my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I do have a comment. The tech simulations.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool idea. I do think people have been looking for something like that.
Yeah, I like that too, and I've had to caution people on that sometimes because somebody didn't catch how realistic they were, and they saw a student doing a simulation and they really thought that they were playing with the settings of the computer, and kind of got onto the student a little bit. Because what happens is the way it was just had to be set up, it took over their entire screen.
Wow.
And it looks just like you're playing with we pick on the Microsoft operating system for this. So you're clicking on the little icons and it's popping up, and it looks pretty real. If you look carefully, you can say, okay, that's a simulation. But if you're not used to it, it looks very real.
And are they all geared towards the Microsoft operating system?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. At this point, we're also looking at some other things and some partnerships with other people, but that's a little further down the road.
Okay, but maybe eventually.
Yeah, eventually, yes. The other thing that we're working on, and we just partnered with a new software vendor out of New York City, and I've seen this demonstrated, and I really want to play with this more, is the concept of augmented reality. And I'm very particular about terms. Augmented reality is different than virtual reality, where virtual reality, you're wearing a headset and it looks like everything's surrounding you. With augmented reality, you're using a device like a tablet, and you're looking at the device and you're seeing what's the room that you're in, and then the software is overlaying special images onto that, and you interact with those images. Our first course that is going to use that is going to be released in the fall, and it's kind of a freshman English course where you use famous paintings to tell stories. And it kind of infuses a student with a new idea of how to tell stories through visual media. Played with it, it looks really cool, and it works really nice. I'm really anxious to see how else we use this piece.
That is really exciting. AR seems like a really cool future.
Yeah,
well, I guess present now.
Yeah, well, I actually, honestly, I like the use of AR in education more than VR, because I think VR has its place, but it's a little gimmicky.
Right.
And you have to buy special hardware. and not everybody's going to do that.
Right. Sure. Well, that's coming up on the end of the session. So thank you
Right.
to those who've attended. In other sessions, they had you fill out a link for a sign-in sheet. I was having issues with that this session, so I did record everybody who was here, and I manually entered your name into the sign-in sheet. So you do all have credit for being here. Don't forget, we have our next ELA Tech Talk coming up next Wednesday at 12:30, and then David will be continuing the session here again in 20 minutes. So if you would like to hear more about this, please stick around and join us in 20 minutes. David, as always, you're a wonderful source of information, so thank you so much for presenting.
Oh, thank you, folks. I appreciate you being here.
All right, we'll see you all in 20 minutes.